His name, Steve Raible. For 7 seasons, this speed burner from Georgia Tech glided down the field, making catches like no other. Pre-game catches, that is. Raible was the consummate pro who not only enjoyed the spotlight, but prided himself in being the first to congratulate his teammates. There have been faster receivers. There have been better receivers. But there has never been another Steve Raible, and we're grateful for that on this Seahawks Flashback.
Looks across the field, boom! Breaks through, stiff arms a man, there he goes! Inside the 40, 35, 30! Looks to the end zone, got all kinds of time. Now he has some running room, he runs to the right side, touchdown Seahawks! Holy catfish!
There's something about the whole family idea of football that to this day resonates for me. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's a basketball state. And I was a huge basketball fan. Oh, I was probably 10 or 11 years old when I really got interested in football. Both watching it and wanting to play it. I liked the excitement of it. I didn't mind the contact. I didn't mind hitting somebody or being hit. I guess I loved the fact that every Sunday I could watch it with my dad and my brother and my sisters, and we'd watch the game on TV. I played football for 5 years before I ever got to high school. But I was a little small when I started high school. I was like 5'4". And then between my freshman and sophomore year, I grew like 5.5 inches or something, and I went out for football. It was an all-boys Catholic high school. They had great teams, state championship teams. Ended up being the starting slot back and wide receiver, and I got a scholarship offer to go to Georgia Tech. 3 of the guys who were ahead of me at Trinity High School in Louisville, Kentucky, went to Georgia Tech. The recruiter himself was the assistant coach. His name was Jerry Glanville. Jerry is quite the salesman, and he made it seem like the be-all, end-all, and a place to go and get a great education. I had no earthly idea that I would ever have a chance to play pro football. So for me, it was a chance to get an education and, oh, by the way, play football along the way. So it worked out on all counts. In those days, there were 17 rounds. The Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the 2 new teams, expansion teams, that year in '76. So we had a couple of extra draft choices along the way, along with the veteran allocation. I had a pretty good senior season, and I hadn't heard that much from the Seahawks, but I guess they figured they could teach me how to run routes, and I think they're still trying. I signed a 3-year deal as a 2nd-round draft choice in 1976. I remember we came into the city for a rookie orientation, and the cab driver brought me the back way over Highway 99. So you kind of come up over the hill from the south and you see the city. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. The water was right there. As we got closer to the city, there you saw the Kingdome on the south end of downtown. I thought, wow, this is a pretty spectacular place. Then you come into a brand new city for NFL football. And I remember how lucky we were to have Zorn and Largent. You have those 2 guys, you can build around that. And just hoping that I could continue to be a part of it for a while. We were really lucky. In 1976, first of all, to make the trade for Steve Largent was something that was the grandest idea that anybody ever had. Jim Zorn was perfect for our young team. I was lucky. I had a couple of veterans I could follow. Sam McCullum as a wide receiver. He kind of taught me the ropes. That was kind of the nucleus, these young guys. And then some of the guys that we got in the veteran allocation draft who turned out to be just terrific teammates, the Art Kuhns and the Nick Bebouts of the world. And they were just really special guys, and we've all stayed close. Opening day at the Kingdome against the St. Louis Cardinals, I'll bet you can't tell me who the 2 starting wide receivers were that very first game the Seahawks ever played, regular season game. Steve Largent wasn't one of them, actually. He had been with us about 3 weeks after the trade from Houston, but he didn't start that first game. He started after that, I can tell you. But I started, and a guy named Don Clune, who we got in the veteran allocation from the New York Giants. He and I both started, but Sam McCullum and Steve Largent played a lot that game. I think Sam caught 2 touchdown passes, so it wasn't long before Sam displaced me and Largent displaced Clune, and then I was the 3rd guy. So I spelled both of those guys. I came in and was the backup, and then when we went 3 wide receivers, we'd take the tight end out, and I went in and played the tight end, generally in a slot on one side or the other. That became my role along with all the special teams.
Raible was a pioneer of the Seahawks' now famed special teams unit. From stopping runners in their tracks to scooping up the block punt, Raible was one of the best.
You had to be able to block. I mean, we ran the ball a lot. Sherman Smith was a terrific running back. A fullback named Don Testerman. We played a lot of split backs, I backs, virtually no shotgun formation in those days. So you had to block. You were that next layer down in the secondary. So Steve, Sam, me, we all blocked. And I came out of college at Georgia Tech. I played in the wishbone. I was a tight end, so I was used to blocking. I had no problem with that.
Then in 1979, his special teams play came to a resounding crescendo. A fake punt, a pass downfield, and a Raible catch still ranks high on the all-time Seahawks highlight list.
If you can remember all of your highlights, you haven't had nearly enough of them. So yes, I remember that. I remember the 80-yarder. We were playing the Vikings in Minnesota at the old Metropolitan Stadium. We got a single coverage and I was lined up wide on the left side. And I just ran a takeoff and got outside and looked up and the ball was thrown perfectly by Jim. And the thing that I remember most about it, back in the day when they used to do highlight films for all the teams, there was a guy, the voice for NFL films, and he was literally the voice of God. His name was John Facenda. And John Facenda, when he spoke your name, you heard it and you knew it was John Facenda.
A football team's growth is a story filling many volumes. This is Seattle's first edition.
And I just remember him saying, and Jim Zorn served up an 80-yard touchdown pass to rookie receiver Steve Raible. And that just resonated with me. That stuck with me for the rest of my life. If you've been called out by John Facenda, you can now die a happy man.
Jim Zorn matched Fran Tarkington pass for pass. And this 80-yarder to rookie wide receiver Steve Raible was Seattle's longest offensive play of the season.
The best memory of my time, we always seemed to play the Raiders well. We had a good team, went 9-7 those 2 years. So we go to Oakland and we're playing down there. And I caught 2 or 3 passes that game, but I caught about a 35-yard touchdown pass. Jim Zorn will tell you it's the best corner route he ever threw.
In Oakland, it was probably the best corner route I've ever thrown in my life to you. You know, it's pretty awesome.
So a little dip inside and then took off outside. I was lined up in the slot on the right side. And so it was kind of an over-the-shoulder catch like this. Well, now the game is winding down and we have to kick a field goal to win. Time is coming off the clock. So I was lined up in the slot and I ran a crossing route in the middle of the field and the ball was a little bit behind me. And as I reached back for it, Jack Tatum, who was the safety for the Raiders in those days, he hit me right in the ear hole as hard as he could with his forearm. That was legal in those days. And that was it. I don't remember anything about anything else other than I was told later that Efren Herrera kicked the game-winning field goal.
7 seconds left. Raiders lead by 2. Zorn will hold. Herrera with a 46-yard field goal straight away. It's up. It looks long enough, and it is good. It's good. The Seahawks lead the Raiders 17-16 with 3 seconds to go. Herrera makes the field goal, and the capacity crowd sits stunned here at the Coliseum.
We fly back to Seattle. And I spend the night in the hospital with wires attached to my head. They wanted to check for the concussion and all that. So they let me out on Monday. And Monday night, I had already said I agreed to go to a dinner party at a friend's house. A guy who worked for a local radio station was having 4 or 5 people over to his house for dinner. Tuesday was the players' day off. So I said, gosh, I don't know if I feel up to this. I got a headache. I don't feel good. But I committed, I said I would. So I drove to his house, and there was only one other single person there, and it was my wife. She's my wife now. She was the only single person at that, along with myself. We met, we started dating, we got married 2.5 years later, and 38 years later, we're still married. But it was that weekend. So I tend to remember the touchdown catch. I don't remember getting knocked out, but I was told about it. And then I met my wife a day and a half later. So that was a pretty good weekend for me. Pete Rose in 1982, right before the start of the season, it was June of '82, he called on the phone and said, we have 3 jobs open at Cairo right now. One is backup sportscaster, one is host of an evening magazine show 5 nights a week, and one is analyst for Seahawks on radio. We think Steve can do all 3. Now, I had done a lot of TV and radio while I was playing, so I was preparing myself to do that. And he said, the only thing is he's going to have to quit playing football. And I was ready to go to camp for my 7th year. As Pete told Sharon, he's never going to be Steve Largent. Thanks, Pete, for your honesty. And he was right. Said, you know what? I might could play another year, perhaps 2, but this is our future. This is an opportunity to have a career.
Hello everyone, I'm Steve Raible. Welcome to the Seahawks Journal.
The color part, the analyst part, came fairly naturally because I understood the game, because I played it. So I knew when I saw certain formations, I could understand what they were doing, why they were doing it. So that part was kind of a natural for me. Sports reporting on the TV side became a natural for me once I kind of learned how to write AP style, Associated Press style. Once I kind of got the hang of that, okay, now I could turn a story pretty quickly. And you learn by watching others.
We used to be roommates. Many people might not remember that. You kicked me out because I snored too much, but I think a lot of you too.
You did snore, pal.
This afternoon at the Kingdom, for the first time in their 8-year history, the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs against the Denver Broncos. Hello, everybody. Pete Rose with Steve Raible, and a welcome to the Kingdom this afternoon as the Seahawks are going to be in the National League football playoffs, and this is indeed a great day for the city of Seattle and the entire Northwest.
83 rolls around, here comes Chuck Knox. Brought in a few of his own players, but predominantly had the players that Jack Patera put in place. We get on a roll, and we had never experienced anything like that.
Greg off a play fake is back. He throws one toward the end zone. Touchdown to Johns! You can pack your bags for Miami. The Seahawks are heading to the Southland next week to play the Dolphins. Seahawks trail the Dolphins 20-17. Craig looks over the defense, pitches to Warner. He takes off around the right side. He's at the 5. Touchdown Seahawks!
That's 2 weeks in a row. They have played virtually flawless football.
The Seahawks are going to play in the AFC Championship game.
We go to LA to play the Raiders in the AFC Championship game. We had beaten them twice before. Couldn't beat them a 3rd time. It was a remarkable run. Pete and I, we had some really good times and some exciting times. Pete was the best, and I miss him every day.
Touchdown Seahawks!
Touchdown Seahawks!
The play-by-play thing was a little different. I was given an opportunity to do play-by-play during preseason back in the early 2000s. And so I worked with Warren Moon at that time. Moon became available to do the analyst job. The Seahawks kind of had a decision to make. If they wanted me to stay, would I be able to do that? Gary Wright was the guy at the time, and Mike Holmgren was the head coach and general manager at the time too. And so they had to sign off on it. Ultimately, it had to go all the way up to Paul. They gave me an opportunity. Mostly, they gave me a chance to just kind of learn. And so I watched and I listened. I listened to Vern Lundquist forever. And I listened to really good play-by-play guys. Just to be able to hear Pete and how he called the game and his touchdown Seahawks, they stuck with me while I learned on the job. For that, I am forever grateful.
Holy smoke, are you kidding me? Oh my goodness, holy catfish!
When I was walking in the stadium here this morning, somebody was driving by in a car, slowly moving toward the parking lot, and inside the car I could hear him yell, "Holy catfish!" I'd like to tell you I knew where that stuff came from. I'm sure I heard somebody say, "Are you kidding me?" before. One that I kind of liked, and I remember one time, it was in the 2005 season, and it just sort of popped out. How about them apples? I mean, that was an old saying, and it just It just came out one day. Holy Catfish just seemed like it had a ring to it. Somebody made a big play and it just sort of popped out. It has to be a big play. It can't just be a run-of-the-mill touchdown. And you can't use it more than once a game. That's kind of the other rule. It's such a big deal to get a Holy Catfish.
Are you kidding me? Holy Catfish!
Now, pay attention. Here is Channel 7. It's right in Cairo. And here's the Space Needle to help you locate yourself. And Lake Washington's right here. Now, your parking spot will be over here in Bellevue.
I already live in Bellevue.
Good. It'll cut down your commuting time.
Oh. How am I supposed to look?
Oh, smile. Always lots of teeth. Yeah, they like that.
Investigators connected to the Green River murder case believe it may finally be solved.
Now they can call themselves world champs, and they're going to get rings about as big as a pork roast. I became the main news guy in 1993 at Cairo. A succession of news directors. The mustache, you know, people are crazy about mustaches. Well, sorry. I mean, I've had this since I was a junior in college, and I just don't think I can shave it off. I was probably 20 years in the business with that mustache. Ultimately, what happened was everything went HD at the studio. So new lights, new cameras, every detail on HD shows up. This bad boy was starting to get gray. So between the fact that it looked like I had an aging mouse living on the top of my lip and everything else kind of starting to get old, they said, you know, you'll actually look a little younger if you shave that off. So I went home on a Friday night. Now, Monday was when we were debuting all the HD stuff. I was just standing in the bathroom. I was just kind of looking and saying, I don't even remember what I look like without a mustache. I shaved it off right then. In the morning, I brought Sharon up some coffee, and she kind of looked and didn't pay any attention. And she looked and she knew there was something. And then she started to laugh. She had never seen me without a mustache, ever. Monday, I drive into work and I get out of the car and I ran into the general manager's executive assistant outside the building, and she just kind of did this. And she ran right upstairs to the general manager, and within 5 minutes, the news director, the assistant general manager, and the general manager all were standing at my desk. Is everything okay? Well, sure, what? The mustache. Yeah, I shaved it off. And they were just astounded. They had no idea. I'm sort of a stick in the mud. I'm not a big change guy. I like things the way I like them. That was probably a good move. Sharon's liked it ever since, and so I don't foresee me growing one back. Besides, it would be all gray now. It would be awful.
Single wide receiver near side, and the ball goes into the end zone. It's a flag down. The Seahawks are on the board.
I'd be lying if I said you don't get a little more pumped up for those big games. And I know Pete preaches it's just the next game. There's no one game that's bigger than the other. But there's just something special. Big plays in that Super Bowl championship. I can still hear those calls.
The turn, the hand to Lynch. Looks for running room, puts his head down. He keeps running. He's in! Touchdown! Seahawks! In the backfield. Now he scampers. The ball is hit as it comes out, and it's picked off by the Seahawks. Far sideline, Malcolm Smith. 50, 45, he's going to go. 30, nobody's going to touch him. Cut back 20, 10. The Legion of Boom, the Seahawks defense. They do it again. Holy Catfish! Touchdown, Seahawks!
I remember the second half kickoff return by Percy Harvin, and my voice broke at the end of it because I was straining. I was barely back in my seat, and here he goes.
Percy Harvin with the catch. He's on the run. He breaks free. He's across the 40. The speed. There he goes. Midfield. Look out. He's going to go. Takes the second half kickoff all the way back. Baby! 88 yards for a touchdown. We knew Percy was going to do it tonight. Touchdown, Seahawks! The Seahawks fans, the 12s are going nuts, and the Seahawks stretch their lead to 28-0. I don't believe it. 12s, they're bringing the trophy home. Your Seahawks, Super Bowl 48 champions.
That, to me, was the best call because it was the simplest. The game was ending. I didn't want to count any chickens before they were hatched, so even though after the kickoff return to start the second half, it was all but preordained that we were going to win that football game. But I still didn't say anything until the clock ticked down and the confetti started to fall. It was, and still is, the most exciting call I've ever made, because it's the first championship and the only championship that the franchise has won. And so to have been there in 1976 for the very start of it, to be there when the Lombardi Trophy is presented to Mr. Allen and to Pete, was a blessing. I'm blessed to have been able to see the things I've seen, Super Bowls and great championship games. And for listeners, viewers, this area, the Pacific Northwest, for giving me a chance. I mean, they could have said, no, we don't buy it. We don't buy a sports guy moving into news. We don't buy a news anchor doing play-by-play on the radio. We can't see that. They never did. They gave me that opportunity. Grateful, blessed, long, happy marriage, great friends. Cannot complain about a thing. I sound like Lou Gehrig, but I really am the luckiest guy on the face of the earth.
I'll see you next week. Till then, I'm Steve Raible. So long.